Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Daily Gwei Refuel, where I recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and it says the 14th of June, 2023. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So you may have missed some of these things that happened over the last few days in the regulatory kind of side of things in crypto. So William Mugayaya here has put together a tweet going through, and he starts off the tweet by saying 6 recent small wins from the crypto industry today. So these wins consist of the SEC basically replying to Coinbase and saying that they want 120 days to respond to Coinbase's rulemaking deadline, which shows that the SEC is stalling and felt cornered. And Paul Grewal actually has a great thread about this, Coinbase's chief legal officer, which you can read. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. But yeah, it seems like they are stalling and they feel cornered here because they're trying to basically ask for a 4-month window here to reply to Coinbase. And really the thread kind of, the way the thread describes this and describes exactly what the SEC actually replied with here, it just seems like the SEC is saying, well, screw you, Coinbase, we don't care about you. We don't treat you as like a serious company, and we don't want to play ball with you. And we're just going to use stalling tactics. So that seems to be what they're doing, which I guess is a positive thing because it really does mean that the SEC, I think, has bitten off more than it can chew. Probably didn't expect the fight. Yeah, and also I don't think that they have as strong as a case as as they think they do, of course. And then Williams says that the judge ruled the SEC can't shut down Binance US and asked both parties to compromise on a solution. So there was some news floating around about how the SEC, I believe, wanted Binance US assets frozen, but then the judge overruled that and said the SEC can't do that and can't shut down Binance US, and asked the SEC and Binance's US arm to come to a compromise here. As I mentioned yesterday, the Hinman emails revealed that the SEC didn't follow through on the path that he opened for allowing some tokens to be classified as non-securities, showed he had tacit approval but no follow-up. There is another update here from, I believe this is the Financial Services, the Republican Financial Services Committee. Had a hearing on clarity in digital assets, and it went well. And the Tom Emmer here, who I've spoken about before, revealed that Gary Gensler told Congress last year he needed legislation to regulate the digital asset industry, yet this year he's saying he doesn't need it. Fifth thing, 2018 Gary Gensler video surfaced with him saying BTC, ETH, Litecoin, and Bitcoin Cash are not securities. I mentioned that yesterday. And last week, Caitlin Long's Custodia Banks was allowed to pursue Fed supervision membership via other channels despite the Federal Reserve's objections. So yeah, bunch of positive regulatory news over the last week in the face of all the negative news, obviously with the SEC going after Binance and Coinbase. But I really do think that we're in a great position here because, as I said, the Republicans seem to have made this a core issue for them, and they seem to be hitting the SEC very hard here. Now, as I mentioned yesterday, there's a lot of political games being played here, and they're doing it for a lot of just political reasons. But at the same time, does it really matter if the end result is what we're looking at? Because the end result is what we want to see is basically more guidance from the SEC, clear guidance from the SEC, more legislation for crypto, and making it easier for companies, or making it possible for companies to comply with that. So I think that the ends justify the means in this case, not to overuse that expression there, but I do think that the ends justify the means in this case, and I'm really glad that there are some people that are fighting for crypto, right, and fighting on our behalf there. And obviously, it's not just the Republicans. It's also the companies like Coinbase and even Binance. I mean, as I've said plenty of times in the Refuel, I think Binance is definitely guilty of some of the shady stuff that they're accused of doing, especially in the earlier days. It was really an open secret that they were doing that kind of stuff. But at the same time, I don't think the SEC should win a case against them based on the security stuff, like trading. Obviously, they alleged both Coinbase and Binance are running unregistered brokers in the US and trading unregistered securities. But at the same time, Coinbase has been saying for a long time that the SEC has offered or afforded no path forward for really any exchange based in the US to register or to come into compliance at all. So I don't think the SEC should win on that at all, and I don't think they're going to win on that, honestly. I really think that they're going to lose on those points, but at the same time, there's obviously some things that are shady there, and I believe that should definitely be chased down. If so, because we obviously want things to be fair in the centralized kind of exchange space. We don't want another FTX, obviously, and unfortunately, FTX is just one in a long line of centralized exchanges that has either gone under or done a lot of dodgy stuff over the years. So we want clearer rules there. We want clearer guidance there. And I think we're going to actually get it. It's going to take a while. It's probably going to take a couple of years at this rate. But I think that the main concern from people is around the SEC being able to shut down these exchanges or being able to get these assets listed as securities so that they're delisted from the exchanges and stuff like that. As I've said, I don't think that Binance or Coinbase are going to delist these assets. Binance US maybe will do it. But we'll have to see there. But Coinbase, I don't expect to do this, and I don't expect Binance Global to do it either. There has been some smaller, I guess, like just exchanges, but they're not crypto exchanges. They started off in TradFi and then added crypto assets like Robinhood and a couple of others that have delisted the assets that the SEC named in the lawsuits, but they don't really count. I think Robinhood was probably the biggest of them, and the volume that Robinhood did last month for all of crypto, so all the assets that they trade on there, including ETH and BTC, was like 2 billion or something like that. Binance does that like every day, right? So, and that's just one exchange there. So I don't think Robinhood really matters that much. And the people using Robinhood to buy crypto are probably like the ultra retail normie investors and tourists who are really only around in the peaks of bull markets. So again, it doesn't really matter, I think, in that respect. And honestly, I could see them adding it back if there was a sufficient demand there if we enter another bull market. But yeah, I don't expect Coinbase or Binance to delist those assets there. But anyway, just a great little summary thread from William, or tweet, I should say, from William. You can read it fully if you want. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. And also a thread from Paul Grewell about that SEC reply to Coinbase, this back and forth that they've been having. You can read that little thread there. All right, so moving on to some Ethereum-related news. There is a new post here on the finality incidents that happened on the Beacon chain a few weeks ago now. So this is on the ETH Research forum. It is titled Cascading Network Effects on Ethereum's Finality. So this is actually quite a deep dive into exactly what happened here with a lot of really, really cool insights. So I wanted to post it on your guys' radar, and you can obviously check this out. It'll be linked in the YouTube description below. But it has a bunch of pretty charts, a bunch of great explanations about exactly what happened, what the impact was on network, on end users, and some simulations as well. So I highly recommend giving this a read if you're interested in any of that sorts of stuff, which you should be, honestly. It's very interesting reading, and you should go definitely check that out. But the funny thing is, I was reading this yesterday, and I saw that the finality events actually happened over a month ago now. Man, time flies. It really does feel like the finality stuff happened last week, but no, it's been a month. That happened on May 11th and May 12th, which... it's just crazy that time has gone by that quickly. And it's been 2 months since Chappella went live, since staking withdrawals went live. So yeah, it definitely feels longer than what it. It feels shorter than what it has been here. But yeah, no, it's been quite a while. So I just felt that was a funny thing to point out. But yeah, you should definitely give this post a read. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. I'd call out some key insights normally on posts like this, but there's a lot in here and it's quite dense. So I don't think it'd be wise of me to try and summarize anything here, because you guys already know what happened with the finality incidents. It was due to some bugs in the clients that were fixed because of the fact that more validators were coming online and there was a lot more work being done by validators because withdrawals were enabled, but those have since been fixed and we haven't seen any finality issues since then. But you should definitely check out this post just for full details on that. All right, speaking of Ethereum just generally and core development generally, I saw this tweet from Light Clients, who is basically showcasing here in this screenshot a lot of the calls going on in the Ethereum core development ecosystem right now. So there is a call for the Holsky or Holsky testnet launch, which is a new testnet that's being spun up that I believe is going to replace Gurley. There is a call for Verkle implementation, which is part of the Verge upgrade. There is the normal consensus layer call. There is the EIP 4844 implementers call. There is the EOF implementers call, and there is the execution layer meetings, the normal execution layer meetings as well. So a lot of different calls going on right now in the Ethereum core development space, but I think this speaks to what I've been saying really since the merge went live, that Ethereum core development and research is in its best place it's ever been, and they just keep executing. And it's really great to see that there's so many different calls being spun up, and there's actually enough people on these calls to justify there being a call, and things are moving along really nicely. Because after we deliver Denku this year, the main focus I think of next year will turn to things like potentially MEV burn and PBS and Verkle trees and stuff like that. But obviously that stuff still needs to be researched, specced out, and then built out. So we don't know exactly when that's going to happen next year. And honestly, I couldn't even tell you exactly what's going to go into the network upgrade after Dencun. I think it's still a little bit early to tell. I don't know if Verkle trees are going to be in that upgrade. It just depends if we get a spec by then or anything like that. And they're only on their second implementers call here, so it seems like we do have a bit of a spec, but maybe it needs refinement and things like that. But maybe we get that, but we could even get things like MEV burn and PBS. Honestly, MEV burn's a bit up in the air for me though, because I think that the community is going to be split on MEV burn. And the reason I say this is because people like the MEV lottery that currently exists if you're an Ethereum validator, because you stand the chance, even though the chance is really, really small, you stand the chance of getting one of those big block rewards, right? Now, I think that when you actually work this out and you do the math, you run the numbers on this, and you average it out over like a year, 2 years, those big blocks, even if you were to get one, like you'd have to get one of the really big ones. I'm not talking about like a 1 ETH block reward. I'm talking about like a 60 ETH block reward, one of those ridiculous blocks. And as I've explained before, the chances of you proposing one of those blocks as a solo validator and getting all the rewards for yourself are extremely small. Like it's so small that I haven't done the proper comparison on this, but I think you may have better chances of winning your country's lottery than you would of proposing a block like that, just because the chance is so small of that happening. So I think that concern is really overblown there. And I think that with MEV burn, you basically just redistribute the, I guess, value from validators to all of ETH holders. And it's not like validators still aren't making a nice amount of money, even with just the normal execution layer rewards, not counting MEV and the consensus layer rewards. I still think the reward would be like 3 or 4% at current amount of ETH staked. I don't know exactly. Actually, I should look this up so I'm not just giving spitball numbers here. And you can actually look this up on the Ultrasound Money website. If you scroll down to here, no, where is it? Yeah, to here. So yeah, just issuance and tips. So not including the MEV revenue, it would be around 4 to 5%. So actually higher than I thought it would here. So you'd still be earning a healthy amount. And even if it went down to 3%, this is ETH denominated, right? You'd still be earning a healthy amount, because you have to factor in the fact that logically burning more ETH should over time lead to a higher ETH price as measured in US dollars, which makes ETH obviously a better store of value, a better hold for people, and more investable asset. So it really just kind of shuffles the things here. So, but I do think that just based on people's desire to win that MEV lottery, MEV burn might become a bit controversial. Do I think that it'll become so controversial that it doesn't get into the network? Maybe. It depends on the implementation, because there's multiple different ways it can go. It also depends on if it's argued by the core developers and researchers that it's something critical to the network. Because I think that the whole goal of MEV burn isn't to just burn the MEV to pump ETH or to like make ETH more deflationary. The whole point is to make the network healthier overall, because the end state of MEV really is an unstable network. That's why we're working on PBS and ePBS and other and that's why MEV boost is a thing. That's why MEV burn is a thing, and other solutions to that. It's really to make the beacon chain or the Ethereum network healthier and more secure. So we'll cross that bridge when it comes to it. Probably MEV burn isn't going to go into the upgrade after Dencun. Maybe it goes into the one after that, because there still needs to be a lot of discussion, a lot of things done for that. But I don't think PBS is controversial. I don't think Verkle trees are necessarily controversial, and there's a bunch of other stuff that fall off of that as well that I don't particularly think that is going to lead to more controversy. But we'll see. We'll see what happens on that front. All right, so Jasper from the Rocket Pool community has shared a little tweet thread here talking about what the, I guess, like staking ecosystem looks like 2 months post withdrawal. So he says here, let's see who the big winners are in market share. And spoiler alert, it is Rocket Pool. So you can see here that the Shanghai or Shapala upgrade occurred on April 12th of this year, and the LST market share on the day before was as follows. So STETH was around 74% market share, CBETH was 15.5%, RETH at 5.8%, Frax ETH at 1.4%, OS ETH at 1%, and Anchor ETH at 0.7%. And then exactly 2 months later, CB ETH is down 25%, falling from 15.5% to 11.5%. And you see the numbers here that obviously Lido gained a little bit. It's at 76%. RETH also gained, or Rocket Pool gained. It's at 7.2%. Fraxeth as well. They were the big winners here. And then, yeah, I mean, most of the loss seems to have been in CBETH. It went from 15.5% down to 11.5% there. Now, the reason why Kraken isn't showing in this is because Kraken doesn't have an LST, but Kraken would have shown up as being, having, I guess, like a 50% reduction or something like that, since they had to unstake a lot of their ETH there. But yeah, it just shows that the LSTs obviously continue to grow here. It's nice to see Rocket Pool continuing to grow. Obviously, Lido going is not ideal because Lido already has such a big market share, but I don't think Lido's share of LSDs is really going to go up from here that much, right? It is at 76%. I don't think it's going up to like 80, 85, 90% or anything like that. I think that the fact that, Rocket Pool is growing, Fraxeth is growing, and there's obviously going to be other LSTs that are coming online, something like Stakewise V3 and other such things like that, it's going to chip away at that Lido market share. But as I've said before, it's going to take a while for that to play out. And I think that, 2-month recap is obviously great to see, but still probably too short to see the effects of any kind of like reshuffling or anything like that. But yeah, you can check out Jasper's thread. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. All right, so I think the biggest announcement over the last 24 hours was UniSwap announcing UniSwap V4. Now, this isn't V4 live on the network, as I speculated yesterday. There's an early implementation of the code that can be read on the GitHub repository here, but it seems like the main focus of UniSwap V4 is getting the community to build on top of it and to be more involved in the development process, which is what I speculated on yesterday as well. So the main feature seems to be this thing called hooks, and they describe hooks here by saying, hooks add entirely new functionality to pools, such as dynamically adjusting fees or creating new order types. And then as you can see here, they've written a few sample hooks to demonstrate their expressiveness and capabilities. You can have a time-weighted average market maker, or TeamWham, you customize on-chain oracles and on-chain limit orders. So it seems like these hooks are basically a way for people to customize their Uniswap liquidity pools in any way that they want to do that. Now, obviously, this isn't a new feature to the DeFi ecosystem. There are other projects that have this feature, but I think it's pretty cool that it's coming to Uniswap V4. And another major feature was that all the V4 pools will now live in a single contract, reducing the cost of pool creation or gas cost of pool creation by 99%. When combined with the new Flash accounting system, this greatly reduces the costs of routing across many pools. Now, again, this isn't unique to Uniswap. A balancer has had this for quite a while now, but still, it's great to see it come to Uniswap because Uniswap obviously is the dominant decentralized exchange on Ethereum and L2's and even other networks out there. So it's great to see that there. But yeah, overall, a pretty cool announcement here. Pretty cool to see Uniswap V4 just becoming more expressive than it has been in the past. It seems like they're approaching the development of V4 the same way I think Optimism is approaching the development of the OP stack, where they want to build as openly as openly as possible, but also build kind of like a modular stack where people can customize things to their heart's content, which seems to be a theme that is growing more and more now, this modularity thing, which I've talked about it on the Refuel in the context of, I guess, like protocols like layer 2's for a long time now, probably as early as maybe 2021 when Paul and I started talking a lot about it on Twitter. But generally, this concept of modularity is something that I think is going to be a main theme for the foreseeable future, because you not only have things like Uniswap V4 and the L2's, but you also have things like Eigenlayer, which enable more modularity. Polygon announced Polygon 2.0, which seems to be taking a more modular approach to things. So generally, I think that that's a theme to pay attention to. That's definitely going to be a big narrative, I think, during any kind of bull market or market activity. So yeah, it's great to see that Uniswap is following down this path, because I do believe that modularity, giving developers and users more choice over basically everything, is the way. I really do believe that that's going to lead to a healthier, more expressive and better ecosystem, and it really falls into that kind of like bazaar model of developing instead of the cathedral model. And I've described these models before. Basically, you can think of a bazaar as like an open marketplace, essentially, right? A bazaar literally is an open marketplace. You go there, everything's chaotic. There's no kind of centralized entity controlling which stall goes where. You just set up your stall, you put your prices up, right, and you sell your goods. goods and wares or whatever. Whereas a cathedral model is a centralized thing, right? You have like a cathedral and you have a hierarchy in that cathedral. And, you know, cathedral obviously in a cathedral model, don't take it too literally, because then it falls into religious analogies. But just think of like the hierarchy, like and how a lot of companies obviously operate that, a lot of marketplaces operate like that. But in terms of modularity, it fits into the bazaar model, and Ethereum has been developed as a bazaar model itself for a very long time now. So it's great to see the ecosystem kind of wrapping themselves around that and having and building their products like that. But anyway, you can read the full details about V4 here, which I'm sure you guys have already seen, and you can read the code as well. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. All right, so a big announcement out of the Aevo ecosystem today. So I remember I've talked about Aevo on the Refuel before. They are a layer 2 roll-up on Ethereum, focused on, I believe, trading of, what is it, perpetual trading, I think? I've forgotten now here, but they're using the OP stack to build out their layer 2 here. So what they've announced today, and they've said here, big announcement, is that they've actually got 2 new releases. First, they've announced the open mainnet, so you no longer need an Aevo pass to trade on Aevo. And I think the second announcement is Bitcoin trading as well, so you can now trade Bitcoin there. No, that's right. Aevo is a derivatives protocol, so they trade like options and things like that on there, and you can actually see that here in this interface. It actually looks really nice. Reminds me of DYDX. Obviously, DYDX is kind of not abandoned Ethereum, but they're pursuing like their Cosmos app chain, which between you and me, I've always thought was a mistake, and I think it's become even clearer that it's a mistake, because they can just build on the OP stack like Aevo has done, and you know, it's all well and good, but anyway, I'm not gonna go down that road there. But yeah, cool to see that this is released in a kind of like an open mainnet fashion now, and Bitcoin trading is on there as well. So you can go check this out for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. All right, another announcement out of the Polygon ecosystem today. So Balancer has been deployed onto the Polygon zkEVM, marking a significant stride towards optimized Ethereum scaling and liquidity growth in the zk DeFi ecosystem. So obviously you guys know Balancer. I mentioned them just before. They've been around for quite a while now. They have done a lot of innovative things within DeFi. So it's great to see them launching on Polygon's zkEVM, which is still in obviously early days and still getting on, the Polygon zkEVM still needs to get all of these apps on there to make it a more attractive place for users and even developers to build on. But Balancer is one of those core protocols that need to go live before certain other protocols can go live here. So it's just great to see that they've gone live on Polygon zkEVM here, and there is a pretty lengthy blog post about this that you can actually read. There's a lot of cool stuff in here, actually. The different initiatives, different descriptions of things like boosted pools and LST, liquidity flywheels and hubs and stuff like that. So there's actually quite a long blog post. It's a 9-minute read for an announcement here. So you should definitely go check that out. If you haven't yet, I'll link it in the YouTube description below. All right, so Taiko has a new blog post out today. So they say here, in this article, we map the current landscape of L2 MEV, thinking about different MEV consequences for different L2 designs. We'll also briefly overview different ways of L2's decentralizing and how it may impact L2 MEV. Now, this is a really great blog post. It is definitely not a short read. It's quite lengthy here, but if you're at all interested about how L2s are possibly going to handle MEV and about how L2s are going to decentralize their sequences and stuff like that, and how that plays into MEV and how this all maps together, then this is definitely a recommended blog post to read here. I had a really great time reading this. I learned a lot from it, honestly. It, again, talks about the modular architecture and things like that, shared sequences, all these sorts of stuff that I've been talking about on the Refuel for quite a while now. This kind of all brings it together and explains it in a really easy to kind of read way. So yeah, highly recommend checking out this article or blog post for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. All right, so Orbiter Finance has put out a thread today describing why they are building a cross-rollup bridge and not a cross-chain bridge. So they said here, they're delighted to share with everyone that Orbiter cross-rollup protocol, that Orbiter cross-rollup protocol is optimistic for the obedient majority and severe arbitration for malicious minority. So it feels like they're doing like a play on words here, but essentially this is their way of saying that I believe they're building like an optimistic bridge, optimistic cross-rollup bridge here. And I've talked about Orbiter Finance for quite a while now as well, but you can check out this thread to learn more about them. They've got an explanation about how exactly their design works here, why they believe it is, it is a good design, why they're building a cross-rollup bridge instead of just a cross-chain bridge, and all that kind of stuff there. So I'll link this in the YouTube description below for you to check out. But I do want to have a bit of a discussion here off the back of this about bridges generally. So bridges, there's going to be a lot of them, and I've said this for a while, but there's going to be a lot of different bridges, and they're going to have a lot of different designs. Obviously, Orbiter has their own design, Connext has their own design, Hop has its own design, and because of they have all these different designs, there's going to be different risk trade-offs for each of these bridges. Some of them are going to be like totally centralized, some of them are going to be liquidity-based, some of them are going to be optimistic, some of them are going to attempt to be decentralized, but not really, because maybe they rely on something like an Oracle, which isn't decentralized. So there are going to be different designs here, and also, when you bridge native assets to somewhere else. So for example, if you bridge ETH from Ethereum to another network, especially another layer 1 network, such as just for example, Binance Smart Chain, your actual ETH is still living on Ethereum. It just gets locked up on the Ethereum mainnet, and you get issued an IOU on the Binance Smart Chain, right? But ETH is natively issued on the Ethereum network, and that's where it's always going to live. But then you have things like Circle issuing USDC natively on Arbitrum, but having a native USDC issued on Ethereum Layer 1 as well. But if you bridge the USDC from the native USDC on Arbitrum 1, I should say, to Ethereum mainnet, then that becomes the IOU. So this whole concept of bridges and how these all things interconnect with each other is going to get quite confusing. And the L2 Beat website actually is putting together a lot of documentation around this in order to track this. But this is also why I believe that we shouldn't actually have too many bridges. I feel like we should only have a handful of them, and ideally we should really only have one. And the reason why I say this is because you want to make it really easy to reason about these things. And I'm talking about bridges, I should say, in the context of third-party bridges. There's bridges, obviously, that are part of the Layer 2 protocol. For example, Optimism has its own canonical bridge. Arbitrum has its own one. The zkEVMs have their own one. I'm not talking about those. They're fine, right? They're part of the Layer 2 protocol itself, the rollup protocol itself. So that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the third-party bridges like Orbiter and Hop and Connext and stuff like that. In an ideal world, you would have just one of these things that's fully decentralized. No one can mess with it. It's very simple, and everyone understands what's going on there. But we don't live in an ideal world. And I think for a number of different reasons, it's not going to play out like that. But at the same time, I think the worst case would be there being like tens of bridges or hundreds of bridges that have all these assets in them, and then people are just bridging everywhere, and it gets very confusing from a social standpoint. Like doing the accounting technically is relatively easy because you can keep track of everything with using smart contracts. But the social side of things, agreeing on what's the real asset and what's the IOU and what's the native asset and what's not, it becomes very messy when you have too many of these things. So in saying that, bridges, I believe, also are a kind of like liquidity begets liquidity thing, where the more liquidity on one bridge, the more liquidity they're going to get, because it's more profitable for LPs, because more people are using it, because there's more liquidity there for them to use, and all that sorts of stuff there. But just something to keep in mind around bridges generally. And for me personally, because I'm not really in a rush a lot of the time, I generally prefer to use the canonical bridge to get in and out of L2s, even if it's going to take 7 days. So for example, I regularly do withdrawals from these L2s through the canonical bridge. Like I'll use some of these bridges like Hot Protocol and stuff like that. Like that's fine. I'm not saying you shouldn't use those, but if you're in no rush, if you can wait the 7 days, then you're probably better off using the canonical bridge just from like a risk perspective, right? And I mean, ultimately, it can work out to the same thing if you're using these other bridges, because the risk is just getting passed around. But generally, I just like to use the canonical bridge to go in and out of these things, just for peace of mind for myself. I'm very risk averse these days, so that's just a personal preference of mine, and especially because I'm not in a rush. Like if I'm withdrawing ETH from an L2 and that ETH I'm not planning to stake or anything like that because it's not enough to spin up a validator or something, then whatever, I can wait 7 days for it to hit my account, and then I get a notification when it does. That's all well and good. But if I'm in a rush, then definitely I'm going to use Hot Protocol or Connext or Orbiter or any of these bridges. But I still also try to stick to just like the ones that I'm used to and the ones that I I know how to use rather than using everything. And also I should mention that there are bridge aggregators as well, like LiFi, li.fi, which I'm an investor in. Just a disclosure there, but that is also a really good tool as well, because that just kind of like brings all the liquidity together, tells you what the best path is, and then you can choose from there. So really, I think bridge aggregators are going to be the most popular thing and the best thing for people to use to get across all these bridges, because as I said, there's going to be lots of these different bridges around, and you're going to want a central place to basically kind of bring them all together and know what the best liquidity path is for you, depending on where you're bridging to and from. But anyway, on that note, that's going to be it for today's episode. So thank everyone for listening and watching. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give the video a thumbs up. Subscribe to the newsletter. Join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Thanks, everyone.